astonishing. Thank you very much, Mr. Bly, for being in our program.
Thank you.
So we try in this program to focus mostly on your background, your works, and your efforts in introducing many schools of literature to the American and English-speaking people around the world. We know that you have started everything when you were 8, 7, very young. Tell us how literature and poetry started to sparkle in your mind.
Well, I was in the country and on the farm a lot as a boy. And when I found some Wordsworth, I loved that. And when I fell in love with a woman for the first time, then I went to poetry. And so that continued then. And then when I got out of, I was in the Second World War, like a lot of the men in my generation.
Yes.
And when we got out of that war, we wanted to do something important or serious. So I went to Harvard, and many other poets, 8 or 9 more, were together in that one class at Harvard. And there I began to find poetry from other countries. And I felt a tremendous possibility of life and joy in America then. It isn't quite that much now. But I felt that the life of poetry would be a gift to myself and to my family and to everyone else. And so that began my finding of poetry from other countries. And I started a magazine in 1958 called The 50s.
Yes.
And the only models we had were English poets, and oftentimes bad ones. So people would send us poems, and I would send them a rejection slip. It would say, you know, this entitles you to buy the next book of Alfred Lord Tennyson as soon as it is published. Or we'd put out a thing saying, the sonnet is the place where old professors go when they die. And they'd write us insulting letters, and then we'd print their letters, which were more interesting than the poems, you understand?
Yes.
We were troublemakers.
Yes.
That's how that went. And so we had a lot of fun with that, and eventually that led me to doing translations, because I needed some models that were not English. We are Americans. I don't know how that would be for you, but our culture is narrow and small, and English background, but that's not for us.
But you are developing a new platform.
We are.
A new platform.
Yes.
Did you spend some time in Korean War? As far as
No.
Not at all. No. But you have experienced the war.
Well, I was in the Navy during that time. It really wasn't war, but it gave me, you know,
some negative impression. Some negative impression on war.
Yes, that's true.
And the reason I asked that question is that later on we find you as one of the freedom fighters against Vietnam War, and even right now we see your writings against the war in Iraq or anywhere else. So why you developed into such a position? Is it a way of intellectualism of today's America or something else?
No. We started doing a lot of poetry readings in the United States for the first time. And we would be invited to universities and go here and there. That was new for us. And then when the Vietnam War came up, I began organizing with another man something, poetry readings against the Vietnam War. And we would simply, people would come and they wanted to hear about the Vietnam War, and we'd be there. So poetry got entangled with that. And we did that for years. You don't know how long the Vietnam War went on. But it gave a lot of dignity to poetry, really, in the minds of a lot of people, that the poets were willing to go up there, and, you know, whether we'd be arrested or not wasn't quite clear. And we did get arrested a number of times.
Yes, I know.
And one time I was thrown in the same cell with Allen Ginsberg. And so we had a wonderful time. We were singing and the other things, you know,
Yes,
doing all that.
And that, it seems that it was a new fashion, a new chapter in literature to be against war and to be involved in social affairs or so, according to your saying. Mr. Coleman Barr, can I ask you some questions? I believe you are very good friends, among other friends you have. When did you know about his works, and how happened that you started to find him close to your works close to your ideas?
I had a friend who found the early book of his called Silence in the Snowy Fields. And I remember an afternoon when we sat on the floor in his house, and he read me that book. And it felt, this was 1963 or 5?
Yeah,
63. And it felt like such new kind of poetry. It was not poetry of the intellect. It was not poetry of irony. It was poetry of what he calls the deep image. But I didn't know it by that name then, but I just adored those poems. They felt very free and very mysterious. And so when I saw that there was going to be a conference that in 1976 up in Minnesota, in northern Minnesota, I just decided I would drive up to it. And so I drove up there, and that's when he gave me that book on the Rumi translations that I needed to, that gave me a life work to do.
And you owe him a thank for such introduction. Mr. Bly, as you said, you have introduced many unknown or less known poets from all over the world to the American audience, including Rumi, that you have introduced through Mr. Coleman Barks. But it seems to us that you are not that much involved in our modern literature in Iran, as you are very much familiar with people like Hafiz, Rumi.
We know nothing about it.
Why? Why is that so?
Well, very few translations of contemporary Iranian poets have come to us. So we are thinking of doing an anthology of the 10 greatest Iranian poets of the last century or something like that, because the Rumi translations were given to us by scholars and the Hafez by scholars, but no one has done work on your more recent poets. So that's a big opening, and we need to try to help with that.
When I was visiting your site, I found very latest poems by you, and when I was reading them, I found very similarity between your ideas and the ideas of some of the Iranian modern poets who have the same nostalgia about the past, the same nostalgia about the change that is happening, and the fightings, the war, loss of friendship or so. Why do you think this familiarity exists, although you don't have any contact with each other, or even they don't have any contact with people like you?
Well, you know, in poetry there's two things. There's the subject matter, and you can, you know, energize poetry by fierceness and so on. And I like that. And Pablo Neruda had that. And Cesar Vallejo. The South Americans have that passion and leftist strength. But when he mentioned my first book, Silence in the Snowy Fields, there's something there that when images are treated without having an intellectual component entirely, they will reach out into the spirit. They are like a little bit of coming from boiling water, that thing that goes up, the beautiful things that go up in the sky. And we feel that. We can feel it when we're doing poems. So that's been my major love of my life, is to find poems in which this movement towards the spirit comes. And you know, and I feel it here, I feel it here, I feel it in Hafez, I feel it in Rumi.
That's right.
It's not an American feeling in general. We're a very practical country.
Mr. Coleman Barks, could you tell me how important was the role he played at the time of Vietnam War in expressing his opposition against that war, or generally the role he played in expressing the social concerns in various periods of time in the American society?
Well, it was very important to American poetry. When I was growing up, it was said that you couldn't write a political poem because it wouldn't be universal if it referred to a specific political situation. He changed all that. He made specific political situations fair subject matter for poetry. And now there are all kinds of poets who write, who include that in their way of writing. But he was very important in getting us out of the Vietnam War, I think. He did an amazing thing once. He received the National Book Award in, I think it was 1968, and he publicly he just turned and gave the check for getting the award to an organization that was trying to get people to avoid the draft and to burn their draft cards. You know,
That's right.
and so that was important.
And I remember that I went down, I went to the resistance people and I said, I know how you can get $1,000. And they said, how? And I said, well, they're going to give me a check tomorrow night and I'm going to turn it over to you guys. So I need you to come up when I call you on the stage. You have to wear a suit. One of them said, I know someone who has a suit. And so when it came to that time, they gave me the money. And then this young man came walking down the aisle, and it was so much tension in the room that people thought he was coming to shoot me.
Wow.
Because of the
Oh
appearance.
yeah, the
Oh,
feeling.
wow.
Oh, I
No,
was
no,
saying
it's a pity,
something.
yeah.
I was saying something that was so dangerous that someone was going to shoot me, but it wasn't.
Mr. Bly, it seems to us on this part of the world that the American society, sometimes, sorry to say that, sometimes it seems to us that the American people are single-minded, and they, for instance, are very much influenced by the media, by the politicians, by the White House, for instance, administration. And we presume that they are not very much interested in reading poetry or listening to the intellectuals. But it seems that we are wrong, and they are that much deep and listening actually to the intellectuals. Tell us about the situation now. Are they still the same as the time of Vietnam War? Do they read poetry? Do they like poetry? Do they like intellectuals? Or they are fed up?
No, I think you don't know how destructive television really is when it gets going.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have, I say to parents, you know, if you allow your children to watch 4 hours of television a night, why not just get rid of them? I mean, sell them to someone. You understand me?
That's right.
That the filth of all of that is staggering in the United States. So that means that part of the American society has been dragged farther down into violence and ugliness.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always another part here that listens, and they're very intense, the ones that listen. So I did a poem against the Iraq War, and I'll read it for you if you'd like to hear it.
Yes, would you please
This
read
is
it?
thought of the first poem that was done against the Iraq War in August of 2002. And I'm remembering how much opposition there was against the Vietnam War. And I say here, tell me why it is we don't lift our voices these days and cry over what is happening. Have you noticed the plans are made for Iraq and the ice cap is melting? I say to myself, go on, cry. What's the sense of being an adult and having no voice? Cry out. See who will answer. This is call and answer. We will have to call especially loud to reach our angels who are hard of hearing. They are hiding in the jugs of silence filled during our wars. You know, Reagan had 3 wars, and we didn't say anything about it. We'll have to call especially loud to reach our angels who are hard of hearing. They are hiding in the jugs of silence filled during our wars. Have we agreed to so many wars that we can't escape from silence? If we don't lift our voices, we allow others, who are ourselves, to rob the house. How come we've listened to the great criers, Neruda, Anna Akhmatova, Thoreau, Frederick Douglass, and now we are silent as sparrows in the little bushes? It's a bad pun on bushes. How come we're silent as sparrows in the little bushes? Last stanza. Some masters say our life only lasts 7 days. Where are we in the week? Is it Thursday yet? Hurry, cry now.
The Friday is coming.
Soon Sunday night will come.
Sunday night is
And that came when he bombed Iraq. So you know, we're trying to develop a poetry in which the poet can describe the grief that we're in without being too doctrinaire or whatever.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Mr. Barks, if you compare his words, his poems, with other poets around the world, because we presume that he is one of the best, at least the best, current or living American poet nowadays with international fame. If you compare his works with other people around the world and history, who else do you think resembles his role, his words, his frankness, his resistance, which I feel in his poetry?
That's a great question. Robert is a major American poet,
Yes.
and his life has been one of service to literature. with the translations and with these political poems we're talking. But always his new book of poems is so fresh, and it's such a joy to read it when it comes out. His new books, and so he's got an audience that is always waiting for his energy to see what form it's going to take. I would say I've never told him this, that he's closest to William Blake.
So that's a revelation.
Yeah, well, he has revelations, and they would get along just fine if they didn't get into a fight.
That's good. Mr. Bly, you are originally Norwegian,
yes,
certainly, and you have spent some time in Norway
yes,
when by the Fulbright,
yes,
what was that, a course or something. How much influenced you are by the European or Scandinavian or Nordic culture and poetry? Because you are referring to American culture, American literature, American poetry several times. But are you that much influenced by that part of poetry or not?
Well, I love the European poets. And Sweden only has one great poet, but I love him. It's Hans Sturmer. And, in Sweden there are no slums. None.
No slum.
And so he wrote this little poem. We got ready and showed our house. The visitor said, "You live well. The slum must be inside you." So I love anyone who can say things like that. So we still keep a very good connection with Scandinavian poetry and with German poetry through Rainer Maria Rilke, but especially through South American poetry with Pablo Neruda, Cesar Vallejo, and so on. Pablo Neruda came to the United States for the first time maybe 15 years ago. We were there in New York, and he came in, and there was, 900 people there, and when he walked in the room, they all stood up and cheered and everything, and he walked in and he said, "I have bought one more copy of Walt Whitman this time. I don't know how many used copies of Walt Whitman I have bought in my life." But he said, "I love him," and So in America, you can't overlook the importance of Walt Whitman. He is like our Rumi, always in the heart, always ahead of everyone. So I don't want you to think that we only love other poets. We love our own poets too.
Okay, good.
We have a great number of them.
Before I ask you to read us another piece of poetry, I want to put a question to both of you gentlemen. You are university professors. You are very prominent. You have enough experience of exploring the world literature, the international poetry literature, and you are in contact with many people around the world. But do you imagine that there is a possibility, as far as Rumi is concerned, as far as our literature is concerned, to set up a center in the United States for studying Rumi and other scholars in our history, just independently? It seems to us that we have least such centers in the United States. Do you agree with me?
I do. And I would love to see a center set up, maybe in California somewhere, for the study of the Iranian poets. That's a great idea.
Just give us a lot of oil money and we'll do it.
Yeah, outside of the universities, maybe.
Yes,
maybe
just
they
independent
could,
center,
maybe.
an NGO or something like that.
Yeah.
How? What can we do? I'm sure there are many people watching this program who might be encouraged to sponsor, to contribute. Tell us what is needed. What shall we do? Where shall we start? Both of you gentlemen.
You first.
I think they'll have to call you, because I have some poems I want to work on when I get home. I don't want to administrate a
he's not
new
suggesting
organization.
that.
Okay.
He's suggesting how would we do it? Would we call it the Rumi Center? Would it be connected to the university? Would it be separate from the university? Would we have students, and would we encourage them to do degrees in Middle Eastern studies?
Yes,
how
we don't know there. We don't know that society.
Right.
Tell us how shall we start? How can it be done?
It should be done now, because the United Nations has declared next year as the year of Rumi. It's his 800th anniversary of his birth in 1207, then 2007. And so there's going to be a lot of attention on Rumi, and here Rumi could be a focus for it, for this center. I don't know what form it should take or where it should be. It probably will have to be connected to a university in some way, but I would like for it not to be under the administration of a university.
No,
Yeah.
no. What is your idea on that?
Oh, well, I think it'd be great to, and we would, what we did there would be to bring over some contemporary poets from Iran and to celebrate the entire...
If their visa are granted.
Oh, we can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. But to celebrate the staggering culture of Iran going far into the past. That's a great inspiration to us. We feel very close to Iran. We feel that we're related to each other. And we want to have, we're willing to take one of our states and give it to you, and we'll take a part of your country and we'll give you Texas. But I mean, there's a lot of affection for Iran
Yes, there is.
and for its literature.
Yeah.
And now is the time to move with that.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Oh,
We don't
yeah.
know that.
Of course, there are Iranians all over the United States.
Yes.
Even in Athens, Georgia.
Yes.
And some of
in
my
your
best
city.
friends are Iranians, Jami and Saeed. And you just somehow you see an Iranian and an American, at least American, sort of educated American, says, "Yeah, that's my brother," And somehow we love the Iranian culture, and I don't know what it's some kind of connection with, it's a sense of humor or passion or something. But it's
Americans
there.
and Iranians are very like each other, except that the Iranians are better educated.
That's right. That's true.
Okay, so I think you have selected
Well,
another
I thought
piece.
one,
Read for us.
another thing we love in the United States is Shajarian, when he
Yes.
sings, and Shaham Nazari.
Yes.
And
You had a performance with Shahram Nazari once. you
yes,
said,
we,
so-
we performed together several times, and then I go to hear him, and then I write poems during that time.
Yes.
And so here's a poem I wrote called "Listening to Shahram Nazari," and it follows one of the themes of the ghazal, which is to have the same word or set of words ending each stanza. I know the horses keep galloping for miles. There's a lot of horse music in Iranian things.
Yes.
I know the horses keep galloping for miles. I know the ants keep lifting their feelers to heaven and planning new triumphs, but it's already too late. When Nazari sings, I don't care if the second atom comes down or not. I don't care if my words get you to cry or not. It's already too late. The smell of coffee spreads out from the fire, and the wild-haired old women sing over the coffin. Go on complaining and crying. It's already too late. I know sweet vowels and inescapable rhythms, and I know how sweet it is when a young woman is here and the old men think of God. But it's already too late. My tongue never becomes bitter because my mouth keeps holding the grief pipe between my teeth. Go on and conquer bitterness. It's already too late. Here on last stanza. Here I am. I'm all alone. It's early morning. I am so happy. How can so much grandeur live beneath my skin? Go on asking. It's already too late.
That's very nice. That's very nice. But it is a pity, as I see, that you.
What are you laughing about?
How can it be so happy when the theme of it is, it's too late, it's
It's
already
too late.
too
It's
late.
already too late.
Everything is too
that
late.
seems hopeless, but it's not. Isn't that
No,
so?
there's a
Yeah.
kind of grief in it, and the recognition. Certain things in your life can't take place now. It's already too late. So what?
Oh, right.
Is it a
Right.
grief, or shall I call it nostalgia? Some sort of deep feeling of sadness.
Well, you see, America is overly cheerful.
Yes.
That's a great disease we have. Always cheerful. Everything will turn out well. The Iraq War will turn out this. No. What we need to do is to have the feelings more of the older civilizations.
Contemplation.
Yes, and in which we realize how much grief there is in everything we've done, in our whole history, in the history of America. There's endless grief with the slaves that we brought in. You know what I'm saying. And somehow I feel, having learned it from Rumi and others, that grief is actually nourishing. It's nourishing to feel grief.
Yes.
Not exhausting. It's nourishing. And we're starving to death because we don't have enough grief. All we've got is pop singing.
Which is not enough.
No.
Of course. Mr. Bly, you've been to the University of Tehran, and the authorities there thanked you for your contribution to what we call the introduction of Rumi to the American people. And that was because Mr. Coleman insisted that this is a joint project started
Yes.
about 10 years ago. Could you tell me about your feeling and experience in the University of Tehran, what happened, and how it affected you?
Today,
Yes.
well, I was very touched that a president of the university would invite two poets. That's number one. And I was touched that all the people came and that they listened so carefully to the poetry that was being done. So I felt this great possible opening of the heart in Iranians, that they're more open to the spirit and to suffering and to God than we are in the United States. So it was, what did you think? How did you feel about that thing today? The generosity of it was amazing.
Yes, it was. And the quality of the attention. I mean, it was after about 2 hours of when we got to talk, and they were listening. It was very quiet, and it was what we did was read poems mostly, and they listened to the original and then to the translation. I guess most people there are bilingual, and classes are taught, aren't
Yes,
they, in English?
yes. Mostly
So
at
so
that
they
level, they are
heard both
bilingual.
of them. They heard both languages, and they heard what came through in both of them.
Gentlemen, I'm sure this is the first visit you have done to
Yes.
Iran, okay? But can I ask you a personal question? Would you care to repeat this experience and coming back to Iran sometimes at your convenience or not?
Certainly.
I would, yeah. I would like a little more rest periods.
Yes.
And because we've been doing, it's a whirlwind sort of 8-day trip. We're just getting in and out of cars, in and out of planes.
Yes.
And so we need
All
to,
ceremonies, protocol.
right,
officiality.
we need more time to sit down at the tomb of Hafez and write poems.
Good.
Yeah.
So thank you very much indeed
Thank
for
you.
coming to our program, and I hope you have a pleasant trip back home, and God bless you all.
It was an honor to be with you.
It was my honor, my
Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you
We
very much.
love your country.